Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today's video I decided to do like a beginner witch tip type video where we're just kind of going to be going over just kind of my idea of what would be good tips for a beginner witch. It's just kind of little things to help get you started into the practice or get you started into witchcraft. So it won't be super in-depth, won't be super serious, won't be super long, just little tiny tips. Before I start the video, I just want to preface it by saying that I know the quality isn't great. Don't think that I don't notice that, because I definitely do. My Macbook, which I usually record on, decided to just stop working, which happens. It's from like 2013 or 2014, so it definitely was due to quit, if you will. But I am quite saddened by that loss. However, I do have my new laptop already, and I figured I would just record from here for a couple days. I'm hoping to order a new camera, like an actual camera to record and stream with, hopefully by the end of the week. So this shouldn't be a permanent solution. It should just be like a couple days worth of videos or a week's worth of videos that the quality will be like this. So please don't think it's a permanent thing. It definitely is not. I definitely will get to fixing it. So anyway, I'll jump into the video. Today's video is going to be super casual. I am in my boyfriend's Star Wars shirt that he gave me because it's too small on him and is, like a semi-dress on me. We're in my lovely room today. We've got my bookshelf with a bit of an altar at the top and stuff, and then my other altar right there with my like yoga mat and hat and stuff. So this is what my room looks like now, and I think it's beautiful. But definitely more casual than like most videos since I've been doing them out in the living room where we have better lighting and stuff. So anyway, I do have a bullet point list beside me. Sorry for the long intro. If you are new to my channel, this will never change. I always have long intros that you probably don't care about, and I'm sorry for that. But yeah, we'll get into the video. I have a list of just kind of like bullet points here that I just want to address. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm not checking texts, I promise. I'm just looking to check my list. So first, this isn't so much a tip as much as it is just kind of something that I think you should know if you're just starting into witchcraft. There are closed practices, as there are in many things, I believe. So I'm not really going to address those closed practices. I might have another video on it. However, I also, as a white person who doesn't have much religion or anything, there's not many that I am a part of, and I sometimes feel weird speaking about those like closed practices. However, just know that there are closed practices in witchcraft that you aren't allowed to partake in if you aren't a part of that culture or heritage or whatever. So that's not so much a tip, and like I said, I'm not going to go into depth, but just be aware of that. And if you ever hear controversy about something, don't be afraid to look it up, to do a little bit of research into it. And if you are ever doing something and somebody corrects you and says you aren't allowed to be doing that, especially if it is offensive or inappropriate towards their culture, or you're just not allowed to do it because of their culture, then listen to them. Like that's typically what I do when somebody's like, hey, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. I definitely didn't realize that. I apologize. Thank you for letting me know. So it's not that hard to just not do something, right? So that's just my take on it. And yeah, I just wanted to let you know that there are closed practices in witchcraft. You can definitely research those if you were interested in them. That way you know what to avoid. And like I said, I might do a video on the ones that I know of at least, but we'll kind of see about that. So the second thing, like I said, not really tips, but the second bigger type tip is that there is kind of this idea of like types of witches. So I hear a lot, especially on Tumblr. I've been on Tumblr since I was like 13 or 12 or something, so I have a lot of experience with Tumblr. And there's a lot of misinformation spread there, as well as just people like labels, not just on Tumblr, but everywhere, right? Like a lot of people just like having a label, and we find comfort and security in the label. And that's okay, right? Like there's no problem in that. However, that can kind of enforce this idea that you have to be a specific type of witch to be a witch. And I just want you to know that isn't 100% true. You can just be a witch who does lots of different things, and you don't have to find a specific niche to be a witch. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, there's terms such as like kitchen witch or house witch or hearth witch or hedge witch or cosmic witch, which is typically how I identify as a cosmic witch just because it sounds pretty, and I do work a lot with cosmic type energy. There's stuff like sea witches or ocean witches, there's weather witches, just so on and so on. There's all these different types of witches. And that is totally okay. If you identify as one of those labels, that's okay. If you're interested in identifying as one of those labels, that's okay too. You can do research into that. You can look into it. I could make a video on the different types of witches. However, just know that you don't need to define yourself as those things if you don't want to, especially since a lot of us meddle in all types of witchcraft, so like I said, I say I'm a cosmic witch. This means I work more with astrology. I really like using the moon and the sun and the stars is something that I just incorporate into my work. I like different cosmic type energies. My lamp over on my desk, if you can see it, is like one of those moon planet lamps. And just, the universe, the cosmos, they're very important to me in my craft. However, that doesn't mean I don't do other things, right? I still work a little bit with green witchcraft. I still work a little bit with kitchen witchcraft. I meddle in everything, right? And that's the way most people are. You're not going to tie yourself to one specific niche. You're going to expand and experiment with tons of different things, and that's okay. So don't feel like you need to have a label as to what type of witch you are. You can just be a witch. And no one has the right to tell you not to be a witch or to be a specific kind of witch. And of course, like I said, if you feel like you want a label, if you feel like you want to kind of have a specific thing that you work in, that's okay, and you're welcome to do research into that, and you're welcome to embrace that wholeheartedly, right? There's no wrong way to be a witch, and there's no wrong way to identify yourself as a witch, so long, of course, as it is culturally appropriate or respectful of those around you, right? I feel like I had more to that point, and I probably spoke way too fast. I am speaking very quickly. I don't want this video to be super long, so sorry if I speak too fast, but we'll move on to the next point, which is correspondences. So something that I think is very important is to understand the correspondences for different items. You don't need to memorize every single thing. If you quiz me right now and you're like, hey, what does a red candle mean? What does tiger's eye mean? What does this mean? I probably wouldn't know the answer off the top of my head. Maybe tiger's eye. But there's certain crystals, of course, that you might memorize because you use them more, just as there's certain colors you might memorize because you use them more, but there's a lot of crystals out there. There's a lot of plants out there. There's a lot of different types of even waters that witches will collect and stuff, if that's your thing. So just know that you aren't tied to this need to remember every single thing, right? You don't, it's totally unreasonable for most of us to expect us to remember every single correspondence and significance to every single thing. However, it is important to know these things. So what I typically do, most people actually will have some sort of book or some sort of notepad or something that kind of just lists everything that they find important about their craft. So for a lot of people, that would include correspondences or significance to certain things. So for example, I have a Google Drive where I just collect as much information as I can. That way I can just easily search a certain thing into my laptop, find the relevant doc about it, and then read it from there and understand and remember. So if I wanted to look up the correspondence for amethyst, I would just go onto my Google Drive folder, type in amethyst, and all these different documents about amethysts would come up, and then I could remember, oh yeah, it's tied to this element, and it means this, and it has these properties, and this is what it looks like, and that sort of thing. So that's what I recommend, because the significance and correspondences about these different items are really important most of the time. If you're going to be doing rituals, if you're going to do spellcraft, if you just want a little boost throughout your day in a certain area, it's good to know these, or at least have an easy way to access that information. So yeah, definitely don't put it, don't put learning the correspondences aside. I know that sometimes it can seem like a big task, so just know you don't have to memorize it, but you should still have the information accessible to you. Even just a book about these different things can be super beneficial, right? So the next thing I had was cleansing, which is something that a lot of people don't know if they're supposed to do, don't know how to do it, and I feel like cleansing is an important part of witchcraft in many different ways. So firstly, like there's rituals and spells just for cleansing, and that's super great too, because sometimes I think our rooms or houses or even selves need kind of a deep cleansing, especially when you pick up all this energy throughout our day, or when we have a big party of people come over and then they leave and you're just drained, right? Like there's so much energy in the house and you need to get rid of it. So cleansing is important for that, but also just for smaller things. Like I like to, when I have a shower, just imagine that I'm cleansing myself in the shower, quite literally by cleaning myself, but also just cleansing off all of yesterday's negative energy that I might have had, just kind of starting fresh, starting as a fresh new slate. So it's important to remember that cleansing has lots of different uses, and to not doubt the importance of cleansing as it is important to do. And there are lots of different ways to cleanse, so don't feel like your way isn't good enough, because it probably is. So you can cleanse with smoke, so that would be like sage or incense or similar ideas. So you could cleanse with that, and then you just use the smoke to kind of like cleanse the item, and you think of like a positive intent, or you just think of like banishing the negative energy, if you will. You can do this around certain items. Like if I wanted to cleanse this microphone, I would like sage the microphone, for example. Or you could sage doorways to kind of banish evil out of the door and invite positive energy back in. You could do it for crystals, for tarot decks, for just about anything, right? You can cleanse just about anything, especially with smoke. However, for some of us, smoke isn't really 100% accessible or 100% usable. So with me, for example, I really struggle to breathe a lot. So smoke does not help me at all. If I am saging, or even just my incense being on for too long, I will have a panic attack and I will not be able to breathe anymore, which would be terrible. I like being alive. I like being able to breathe. And I know a lot of people have similar problems, right? Even if it's just a sensitivity to smoke, or if you have asthma or something, smoke might not be a good option for you. So just know you can still cleanse. There's still lots of ways to cleanse. Some people will use rainwater. So if you go out with a jar and you just collect some water when it's raining, you can sprinkle that water onto different things to help cleanse it. It is important to note certain things shouldn't get wet. So like I wouldn't want to cleanse the microphone with rainwater, right? Because microphones probably shouldn't get wet, at least as far as I know. And same with crystals. There are crystals that aren't supposed to get wet, like selenite, for example. I don't think you're supposed to get that wet. Now, sprinkling rainwater might not ruin it, but you really don't want to take that chance, right? You don't want to ruin one of your crystals. So it is important, like I said before, with correspondences, to also write down or keep track of what things can and can't get wet. That way you're not ruining any of your tools by trying to cleanse. You can also cleanse with cleansing pendulums. I have a cleansing pendulum myself. It's very large, and I keep it in like a little cleansing box all the time. And I use that typically to cleanse my tarot decks, to cleanse my crystals, to open and close circles when I'm doing rituals, to just do all this number of stuff. And it's very, very useful. And I recommend, getting like a cleansing pendulum, because you can use it for everything. Anything that you would smoke to cleanse, you can also use a cleansing pendulum for. Another thing that people use to cleanse is the moonlight. So, during a full moon, I'll typically set all of my like decks and all my crystals and everything out on windowsills. That way, when the moon is out, it'll cleanse it. And you typically will stand over it before, leaving it be, with the intent of like having the moon cleanse it. And then after that, you just leave it alone, and then you take it out usually before sunrise. Again, there are some crystals and stuff that are sensitive to light, specifically sunlight. And again, you don't want to ruin your crystals or anything, right? So it's good to get them off the windowsill by sunrise, but depending on where the window is, or, just what's on there, you don't always have to get it off by sunrise. Just take it off when you wake up, right? So that is all I had for cleansing. Again, sorry I'm talking fast. I want to keep this video somewhat short because I'm very rambly all the time, as I am right now. But we'll move on. Next is divination. Divination isn't 100% important to witchcraft, so there's no wrong way or right way to practice witchcraft. That is important for you to know. The way that I practice witchcraft can be totally different than the way you practice, and that is 100% okay. You are not obligated to practice a certain way. Neither am I, as long as it's respectful of everybody, right? So going into that, I incorporate divination a lot into what I do. I work with my spirit guides very closely. I channel messages from my spirit guides. Sometimes, I'll channel messages from those who have passed on, not ever on purpose, and it's not something I enjoy doing particularly. However, I do it sometimes, even just accidentally. I do a lot of pendulum readings. I'm really involved in tarot and Lenormand and oracle readings. Like, that's just a big thing that I do, as is obvious from the rest of my channel. Divination is a huge part of my craft to me. So if you are also interested in divination, that is super awesome, and you should definitely look into it. And if you aren't, that is also okay. You don't have to like divination. It's not for everybody, right? You don't have to enjoy doing it. You don't even have to be particularly intuitive to be a witch. Likewise, you also don't have to be intuitive to do divination. Some of it can come somewhat logically. It's good to be intuitive, but if you just know the meanings of the cards and how to apply them to different circumstances, then you're okay to read that way as well. So yeah, if you are interested in divination, I just wanted to say there is this misconception that your first deck has to be a gift. This isn't true. It is like it's something that was passed down through generational witches. It's something that's kind of like a very old-timey way of looking at it. And there's definitely no harm in your first deck being a gift, right? But also, if you don't have anyone to gift you a deck, don't get your first deck gifted. You can buy it yourself. You can buy it for yourself as a gift. And also, I have found that the decks that I've bought myself tend to be ones that I enjoy more because I pick decks that I'm pulled to. A deck will call out to me when I'm out shopping for one, and I'm like, okay, that's the one I want. Whereas if someone's buying me a gift, they might not feel that same pull, and they might not get me a deck that's going to 100% suit me, which is okay. And all the decks I've gotten as gifts have been incredibly lovely. However, they're just not always the right for me, right? And typically in that case, I just cleanse the energy and end up regifting them to someone, which is what I typically recommend doing. Or of course you keep them, but sometimes if a tarot card doesn't really, or if a tarot deck doesn't really work with you, then it's just never going to work with you, and it's just better to get your own, I think. But like I said, if you are gifted one and if you like the deck, that's great. But don't feel like you have to be gifted your first deck. It's okay to just buy yourself a deck. Again, though, it's also okay if you don't want to do divination. It doesn't have to be a part of your craft at all. So moving on, we have intent. I'm sorry, my eyes are getting really sleepy. I have my glasses off, so my eyes are not good at handling that. But yeah, we have intent. Intent is the most important thing in witchcraft. Everything we do, we need intent and energy behind it. I'm banging my laptop, so sorry for that shake. Anyway, we need intent and energy behind whatever we do. So I'm not saying that everything could be excused by your intent, right? Like if I go up to my boyfriend and I decide, wouldn't it be funny if I punched him and then I punched him and it hurt him? That doesn't make what I did okay, right? Because my intent, just as my intent was to be funny, I still hurt him, and I should have factored into my thought process that he would have been hurt by that. So I'm not saying that you should go out and hex somebody just because it would be funny, right? Because that's not true. You should probably take into account what could happen if you hex someone. How would they react to that? Would that hurt them? However, with that's not really what intent means in witchcraft. With intent, we're talking about what you want the spell or hex or ritual or curse or whatever it is to do. You're not talking about how you feel about it. We're talking about what you want it to accomplish. So that's what intent means in witchcraft, rather than the typical idea we see of intent, or typical thought process we have of intent. And like I said, intent is the most important thing. Growing up, I firmly believed that, you could make just about anything happen just by intent alone. However, as I've aged, I've learned that isn't 100% true. I mean, to some extent you can. A lot of us have enough energy ourselves to do something with just the intent to do it, right? But for some of us, that is not enough. Or like if I do a spell or ritual with just myself and maybe like one candle, I will be so drained afterwards because it just takes a lot out of you, right? And, it'll be most likely the same for you. If you're doing it right, if you're doing it properly, you'll probably get drained pretty quickly. So it is important to know that intent is important. You need to have your energy to channel the spell and have, the goal for the spell in your mind. But it is good to have tools to help you boost that energy. So that's, again, where the idea of keeping an idea of like correspondences and stuff comes in handy. So when I'm doing an abundance ritual, for example, I'm not just going to sit down, meditate, and think of abundance. I could, and if that's all you can do because of where you live or whatever your home life may be like, that's okay. It's okay if that's all you can do because it'll still give you a little bit of a boost. But if you can afford to get crystals, if you can afford to get candles, If you can afford even just to get some incense or an essential oil, maybe. I don't use essential oils much, but I'm sure they could come in handy. Just something small like that can just help give it that little extra boost. So when I'm doing abundance rituals, like I said, I would sit down, I would call upon my spirit guides and the deities that I worship and ask them, to protect me during this and to help give me a little boost. That way I have a boost from, things that are more on a spiritual plane rather than the physical plane. And then I also would light, like a green candle, since green can represent abundance. Or I'll take out like a green crystal, because again, typically green crystals represent abundance. Or, I'll set out like the Ten of Pentacles in a tarot card, because the Ten of Pentacles, again, can represent abundance. So those are just little things that, it's important to keep in mind when you're doing spells and rituals, is that the intent is super important, but it is good to have more things. Intent isn't always enough to get the exact goal that you want. And also, when you are, intending for a spell to happen, or like you have that intent there, just make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, if you will. Like I said, don't do something just because it's funny or just because you want to see if it works. Like, you have to go in it with the mindset that this is exactly what I want to happen from this, and it will happen. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen, or it might backfire. You might just see negative consequences that you weren't expecting. Moving on, we're at 21 minutes. I won't have many other points to make, but I wanted to talk about altars. So again, kind of similar to like the types of witches, I feel like altars are another thing that's talked about a lot as if it's needed. However, it isn't always. So I do have a couple different altars. They're kind of behind me. They're not set up super great. I'm gonna have better altars once I move out or have like a better living space. But for now, I have just small little altars that just kind of give me a place to sit and meditate at, or keep my spiritual tools in one place. That is not a requirement. If you have to hide all of your stuff in a box in the back of your closet, that's okay. You're allowed to do that. If you want to have a whole bookshelf dedicated to all of your tools, that's okay. You can do that. If you want to set up an altar and you want to just make it just a general altar, just place all your tools on that desk or on that table and that's it, and not make it pretty, that's okay. You don't have to make it pretty. You don't have to dedicate it to anything. If you want to make an altar specifically dedicated to a certain god or goddess, great. That's awesome. Go ahead and do that. That's okay. So I just think it's important to know that about altars. You don't need one. You don't have to want one. You can just kind of do what you want. If you meditate best, or if you do your spells best in the middle of the woods, perfect. There you go. If you do it best sitting out in your living room watching TV, there you go. If you do it best sitting at an altar, then that's okay too. You should look into making an altar. And there's lots of different ways to make altars. People can definitely give you ideas. I can definitely give you ideas as well. But overall, just put what feels important to you on it if you are going to make one. You don't have to follow any rules. There's no guidelines to what makes an altar an altar. Just do what comes naturally to you. Lastly, I wanted to say books. Books are your best friend. They really are. I know sometimes reading sucks depending on who you are and if you struggle with reading or not, but for me, books were my best friend growing up. They were like all I had. I love books. I still love books very much. And there are so many books on witchcraft. It is sometimes hard to tell the good ones from the bad ones. I will be having a YouTube video coming out soon on the books that I personally recommend. However, my witchcraft books are also fairly small. I do study more astrology than witchcraft, at least book-wise. But yeah, there's lots of good books out there if you know what you're looking for. And I recommend that so much. Books can be so helpful. They can give you a good starting point. They can walk through all the steps with you. They can help you focus in on specific things you want to focus on. I have books specifically for the Sabbats. I have books specifically for home witchcraft. I have books specifically for kitchen witchcraft, and so on. Like, you can really find a specific niche of a book if that's what you're looking for. So yeah, read as much as you can. And not even just in terms of books. Read as much as you can online. Find good sites to read. Go on Tumblr and just peruse the witchcraft tags. See what you find there. Of course, do that with do that critically. Make sure that the sources seem informational or are educational, and you're not just getting opinions, but that is of course still an option. You can find some really good stuff there. watch as many YouTube videos as you can from, you know, people who are witches, who practice this on a regular basis. These are just such good informational tools that you can grab and watch or read or do whatever you need to or want to without, you know, overwhelming yourself. Because you can always put a book down. You can always just close a website. You don't have to save these things. You don't have to keep reading if it's too much for you. And it gives you a good opportunity to write things down. So if something stands out, you can highlight it, or you can write it down, or you can type it onto your laptop. That way you keep these things with you at all times. And lastly, my last kind of quick my last quick witchcraft tip is astrology. Like I said, I'm a cosmic witch, so I work a lot with astrology. It's a very big part of my life. And again, it's not like it's needed. So like I said with divination, it's something that you can either choose to look at and be interested in, or you can just say, no, that seems hokey to me. I'm not going to worry about that. And both are totally valid. Both are okay. You aren't less of a witch for not being interested in astrology. So just know that you're allowed to have those preferences. However, if you are interested in astrology, there's so much to it. There's so much more than you realize. Firstly, there's different types of astrology. There's different types of ways to make charts. You have a chart. You're not just your sun sign. You know, like all the planets and the moon and sun were in different, you know, signs during your time of birth. Like there's just so much to astrology, and it's very informational. It's very interesting to research. I highly recommend it if you are interested in it. A good kind of starter point, I think, is Cafe Astrology. I don't like to use their charts. I prefer using wheel charts, which I find on astro.com. However, in terms of like a good beginner guide to walk you through it, Cafe Astrology or Astro Cafe or whatever is so good. So good. I shit you not, I 100% recommend all their like different articles and stuff. It's a very, very good beginner spot, and it can let you know more about it. And like I said, if you aren't interested in astrology, you don't get the big hype about it, that's okay. You don't have to like it. That's totally okay. You're not less of a witch for that. So yeah, that's my little rant. That's my beginner witch tip video. I would have made it prettier if I had my Mac, if I could turn my iMovie on, but I don't and I can't, so this is really all we got, sadly. But I hope you liked the video. You know, I might still try to edit some stuff in, so if the video looked somewhat decent, just know that my editing worked. And if it doesn't, then, you know, I suck, I guess. I need to figure out how to edit these. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, I should be getting a better camera in a week or two, I hope. And yeah, I should also maybe have a tarot video coming out tonight, depending on how tired I am after uploading this. So I hope you all have a wonderful night if I don't see you again. And I will see you all tomorrow. I love you all very much, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video, or at least you found it educational.